All right, you are live, 28 Pittsburgh Street, in the heart of Columbiana, Ohio. The nicest place in America. The heart of Ohio, and Ohio is the heart of it all. States. And here we are in the heart of the heart of the heart.
Can we listen to Mr. Franklin?
Thank you, Riley. Wilson Reagan, ladies and gentlemen. All right, here's where we left off. Reagan's first term. Hello. Talked about the landslide victory that he enjoyed over President Carter. I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer. Maybe grandparents, aunts, and uncles, and why from your teacher, maybe other teachers too, why he was so popular, why people who love America, and you know, you can even say people that there's a relationship, even they're called conservative Christians, that they love America, they love God, and they see America as a place that was blessed by God, a special place in the world. And Reagan just kind of makes you feel that way. One of his nicknames is, his most prominent nickname is the Great Communicator. He was able to speak to people in such common terms. So this video is going to show, he's going to take you from, hey, this is where we were, this is where we are, I should say. We are in the midst of like the greatest crisis that we've known for 2 generations since World War II, got us out of the Depression. Well, where are we going to go? Well, with new leadership, with his plan, we're going to go to great heights out of the depths that we're in. Please don't be a commercial.
After saving with customized car insurance from Liberty Mutual, I customize everything. Like Marco's backpack.
We're constantly changing to keep everyone safe. Lessons in training have improved air safety.
Seriously.
And all lessons are new.
The business of our nation goes forward. These United States are confronted with an economic affliction of great proportions. We suffer from the longest and one of the worst sustained inflations in our national history. It distorts our economic decisions, penalizes thrift, and crushes the struggling young and the fixed income elderly alike. It threatens to shatter the lives of millions of our people. Idle industries have cast workers into unemployment, human misery, and personal indignity. Those who do work are denied a fair return for their labor by a tax system which penalizes successful achievement and keeps us from maintaining full productivity. But great as our tax burden is, it has not kept pace with public spending. For decades, we have piled deficit upon deficit, mortgaging our future and our children's future for the temporary convenience of the present. To continue this long trend is to guarantee tremendous social, cultural, political, and economic upheavals. You and I, as individuals, can, by borrowing, live beyond our means, but for only a limited period of time. Why then should we think that collectively, as a nation, we're not bound by that same limitation? We must act today in order to preserve tomorrow. And let there be no misunderstanding. We're going to begin to act, beginning today. The economic ills we suffer have come upon us over several decades. They will not go away in days, weeks, or months, but they will go away. They will go away because we, as Americans, have the capacity now, as we've had in the past, to do whatever needs to be done to preserve this last and greatest bastion of freedom. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Amen.
From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. But if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else? All of us together, in and out of government, must bear the burden. The solutions we seek must be equitable, with no one group singled out to pay a higher price. We hear much of special interest groups, but our concern must be for a special interest group that has been too long neglected. It knows no sectional boundaries or ethnic and racial divisions, and it crosses political party lines. It is made up of men and women who raise our food, patrol our streets, man our mines and factories, teach our children, keep our homes, and heal us when we're sick. Professionals, industrialists, shopkeepers, clerks, cabbies, and truck drivers. They are, in short, we the people. This breed called Americans. Well, this administration's objective will be a healthy, vigorous, growing economy that provides equal opportunities for all Americans with no barriers born of bigotry or discrimination. Putting America back to work means putting all Americans back to work. Ending inflation means freeing all Americans from the terror of runaway living costs. All must share in the productive work of this new beginning, and all must share in the bounty of a revived economy. With the idealism and fair play which are the core of our system and our strength, we can have a strong and prosperous America at peace with itself and the world. So as we begin, let us take inventory. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government, which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed.
That line became like attached to Reagan. Government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem. And it kind of reverses what we said happened in the 30s. Remember? The 30s were a change in the American mindset to, oh, the government's got to come fix this. The Great Depression was so bad. And then as we got to the 40s and 50s after the war, it was like, oh, okay, everything's kind of getting back to normal. You know, it's America. Government's being too involved in your life. And they got to the 60s, and LBJ put that idea on steroids, and now America, and now get to the 80s, and Reagan's like, whoa, we've allowed 2 generations now of government intervention, government fixing everything, and what's really fixed? We're sitting here in the midst of the worst economic crisis since the Depression, and he's saying it's because the government, we always look to the government. No, it's we the people. If you free up the people and the American ingenuity, and you allow people with their freedom to pursue their goals and get government restrictions off their back, we'll be prosperous again. And guess what? We were. And prophetically almost, he said, it's not going to happen in a day or weeks or even months. It's actually going to take like 2 years, almost. Because for the first 2 years of his presidency, he's going to be lambasted, lampooned, made fun of, Reaganomics. Oh, yeah, real good job, Reagan. Because at first, we were in such a mess that unemployment actually went up. Inflation didn't go down right away. Because he's trying to undo, like he said, generations of thought process where we're going to raise taxes. There was a time that when Reagan took office, if you made $1 million a year, you're going to think this is online. Look it up. How much taxes do you think you would have to pay on $1 million a year? Just take a guess. You're gonna think I'm making it up. Actually, there was a time in America it was higher than this even. Anybody want to guess? Just take a guess. That's laughable. So he's saying if you made $1 million, you have to pay $300,000. That's 30%. $300,000 would go to taxes from the federal government, and I said that's laughable. 70%. The highest income tax bracket in 1980 was 70%. Think about that. If you made $1 million a year, $700,000 would have to go to the federal government. What? And the point is, how does that help America grow? Who do you know that got a job from a poor person? Has a poor person ever employed another person? Right? So there's a constant war that's being waged by some people trying to convince people like me, and most of us, just regular working class people, that it's the rich. We got to constantly tax the rich and take from them and redistribute it to those of us that don't have as much. Well, Reagan reversed that. He took it from 70% at first just down to 50%. It hasn't been close to 50% since then. It's like it's more like 30% now, and people think that's outrageous. The rich aren't paying their fair share. 30% of your income is you make $1 million, you gotta get $300,000 to the federal government. That's not your fair share. What? How's that not fair? Questions, comments? As we get more into Reginald Maximus. Again, it's about we, the people. It's about Americans. It's about him connecting with everyday people, the truck driver, the teacher, the shopkeeper, the industrialist, the professional business people, connecting with all of them. So he proposes a budget in March of 1981 that he says, you know what? At a time when a lot of Americans, those on the other side of the political aisle, would say, hey, we need to keep these taxes high. America, we got to fix this crisis that we're in. So we need to keep taking money from the rich people to help the people that aren't doing so well with this inflation and the interest rates and the unemployment, right? That seems like the logical thing to do. Take it from the people that have, so that the people that are really hurt, hey, if you make $1 million and the government's taking $700,000, guess how much you still have left, greedy? You still got $300,000. Greedy. How much more do you want? That's the way they would look at it, right? He says, no, here's what's going to happen. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to lower the taxes on those people that you want to keep raising taxes on. That will free up them to invest more in their companies and their factories. They'll be able to hire more people. We'll be able to produce more goods, and there'll be less unemployment. And if there's less unemployment, now people can afford to buy things. Inflation will start coming down because there'll be more things being produced. Does that make sense? So now he wants to cut spending. If you notice in his speech, he's like, we've been spending so much money that we're in deficit. All this debt stuff started at this time. But who controls spending? The president or Congress? The president actually can only suggest these things. So he got his tax cuts passed, but they never quit spending. And then comes this unfortunate. How many knew that President Reagan was shot? Not everybody knew that. And he came how people say, oh man, came this close to dying. No, literally. Because I've watched the documentary about the whole surgery process. He literally came this close to dying. The bullet was that far away that he would have been gone. So here is the Mrs. Franken's birthday, 1981. I didn't know her then, by the way.
And the two things are forever, love and Liberty Mutual, customizing your car insurance. So you can take the what you need.
So is there a way I can put an ad blocker so I never get those?
Artifacts of the electronic age, videotape of an ordinary afternoon that in a matter of seconds became etched forever in our memories. What many of us have forgotten, or maybe never really knew, is what a close call it was.
We nearly lost the president.
Absolutely. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that it was close.
Retired Secret Service agent Jerry Parr knows these pictures from the inside. That's him pushing Reagan into the limousine.
He always told me one time, he said, "You treated me just like a baseball thrown into the car." As we pulled away, I could see the bullet hole in the window and 3 bodies on the sidewalk. I knew then that it had been gunfire.
In a profound twist of fate, Monday, March 30th, 1981, was a day that Jerry Parr wasn't even scheduled to guard Reagan. As the head of the protective detail, Parr hadn't yet become familiar with the new president and simply wanted to study his habits.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
A routine day was on the agenda. A few White House meetings and a speech at the Washington Hilton Ballroom. But that routine was shattered at 2:27 p.m. when 6 shots rang out.
The first shot, the first thing that you see, the first yell, the first scream, the first violence, you go into action.
You were operating on more than
It wasn't
training, it was instinct.
instinct, intuition, a combination of both maybe, and all the training and all the factors. I wasn't afraid of him to handle his body like that. In other words, I think when you're a young agent, you're reluctant to do anything. You're trying to grab them or do something with them, but I wasn't. And so it just happened to be that day for me. I hoped it had never come because of what happened with Kennedy.
President Parr is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the trademark.
The 1963 assassination of John F. Kennedy was still fresh in the minds of the Secret Service, and in its wake there had been a stream of violence. The shootings of Martin Luther King Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, Governor George Wallace.
We never talked about that.
And 2 assassination attempts on Gerald Ford. 2 decades of gunfire that had taught the Secret Service one lesson above all: move fast.
If Jerry Parr was a split second slower, he would have gotten in the head. You looked at the angle that he was going at, would have hit Reagan in the head. At this moment,
Washington Post reporter Del Quinton Wilbur has written a new book that discloses heretofore unknown details of that day. It takes its title from Reagan's Secret Service code name, Rawhide.
They didn't think he was shot.
Wilbur petitioned the Secret Service to release these audio recordings of radio calls from the president's limo.
We want to go to the hospital back to the White House. We're going to ground.
We'll just go back to the White House.
so calm. And I think that's the training, the discipline the Secret Service put into those guys.
From the first shot, the door being shut is about 3 or 4 seconds. And then in about 6 or 7 seconds, we started moving. Because I told the driver, move out.
As the armored vehicle raced across Washington, Agent Jerry Parr's mind was racing too. Could this have been a so-called decapitation strike by the Soviets? Were other gunmen still waiting in ambush? Although the shooter, 25-year-old John Hinckley Jr., was in custody, not until late that evening were authorities certain that Hinckley had acted alone. Back at the
By the way, this guy's motive, crazy. Talk about crazy people in the world. You guys, there's an actress named Jodie Foster. She's like probably a little older than me. You probably don't know her. She was popular in the 80s and 90s. He just wanted to impress her, doing something big to get her attention. What?
Hilton Press Secretary Jim Brady was gravely wounded, as were Secret Service agent Tim McCarthy and police officer Thomas Delahanty. At that point, no one knew the president had also been shot.
So my job then was to see if he'd really been hit. And so what I did then, I ran my hands up under his coat, around his belt line, and I started working up in the armpit area, up in the back of his neck, through his hair and everything. And I didn't see any blood at all. But about DuPont Circle, or maybe just under DuPont Circle, started spitting up this blood, profuse amounts of red, bright red, frothy blood. I thought, well, what would cause that? Maybe landing on top of him cracked the rib. Maybe it punctured the lung.
That was when Parr made the single most important decision of the day.
Roger, we want to go to the emergency room of George Washington.
Forget the White House, get to a hospital. By chance, the closest hospital was on the campus of George Washington University, a hospital that had a dedicated team of trauma doctors and nurses standing by, something few other hospitals had in those days.
When I walked down the emergency room after being stat paged to go down there, I had no clue why they wanted me. And I saw all these strange people around, with the earplugs in and everything like that. And I said, what are these people doing here? I walked in and there he was on the gurney, stark naked.
5 years earlier, when Dr. Joe Giordano had taken over trauma care at George Washington, its importance was only beginning to be appreciated.
The surgeons were returning from Vietnam. And the first thing they noticed was that, in the field, they had everything they needed for resuscitation of a trauma patient, and the patients did very, very well. They came back to the United States, and it was a disaster. Emergency rooms did not have experienced personnel seeing patients.
Giordano believes the decision to bring Reagan straight to a modern trauma facility made all the difference.
And we knew he lost about 40–50% of his blood volume with minimal blood pressure. He was 70 years old. I think that would have been a very critical issue if he had not gone directly to GW.
Back at the White House, uncertainty was the enemy. Secretary of State Al Haig famously created confusion about who was running the country.
As of now, I am in control here in the White House.
Reagan's top advisors had by then gathered at the hospital, eager to retake control of the situation. And as doctors began treating the president, not only did his vital signs bounce back, so did his sense of humor.
When we took him to the operating room, he looked up at me and he said, I hope you all are Republicans. And I said, today we're all Republicans, Mr. President.
Presidential aide Lynn Knopfler
He's near death. I
lost
hope
no
you're all
time
Republicans.
sharing Reagan's joke with the rest of the world.
He said to the doctors in the operating room, I hope you're all Republicans.
In a way, this event formed a bond with the American public.
Author Del Quentin Wilber.
After the shooting, people saw him as a person. He was a guy who laughed at death, right? He cracked jokes. American people like that. They like a guy who can do that. And it enabled him to separate a person from his policies and politics.
The combination of skillful message control and Reagan's rapid medical recovery was a game changer for his presidency.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Appearing only a month later before a joint session of Congress, it was clear Ronald Reagan was back on track.
You wouldn't want to talk me into an encore.
He got a lot of benefit down the road. Iran-Contra, the other controversies may have sunk another presidency, but they didn't sink his. I'm convinced it's because the people of America got a rare glimpse at someone without the facade on. Remember, he had the most scripted presidency, and this was its most unscripted day.
An awful day to be sure, but one that came to define the legacy of Ronald Reagan.
Questions, comments? You can find out a lot more, which I have done in the past. There's a great documentary about what happened, like I said, coming this close to death, how close he really was to almost losing him there on the operating table because how close the bullet came. Good news, especially if you are one that thinks that women and men should be treated equally, which I hope is all of us, is that the first woman Supreme Court justice takes the bench on September 25th, 1981. Sandra Day O'Connor, first woman on the Supreme Court of the United States. Okay. Reagan's presidency became known as the Reagan Revolution. Did you guys finish that? Sandra Day O'Connor, first woman on the Supreme Court. Yeah. As mentioned earlier with the tax cuts and wanting to cut spending, the Reagan Revolution was primarily an economic one, but the two basic points are this. Hey, we're America. America has to be strong, and America has to be free. That's America, right? So as he's proposing cutting all this, what he would say wasteful spending where the government's just taking care of people instead of allowing people the freedom to take care of themselves, the one area that we have to increase spending is defense, right? We're coming out of the 70s where everybody's going, no nukes, no nukes. We got to cut down our defense. We need to, with the Russians, mutually agree that we're not going to build any more arsenals, right? Reagan took the opposite approach in that too, just like with taxes. The opposite approach was no. We need to increase our spending. We need to find peace with not only Russia, but all of the world through strength. That's the quote. Peace through strength. That's how we're going to achieve victory in this Cold War we've been fighting for 2 generations now. The Russians were constantly going through these negotiations and agreements, and they always renege on the agreements. And we're always making ourselves like, okay, we're the good people. We're not going to build any more weapons. No, it's not working.